Welcome back. Yeah, we're a little more casual today, giving a little shout out to my hometown because I'm really proud of them, that they have a pride. So if anybody's watching from B-Town, I'm looking at you. So we've gotten through the early years. We've talked about adolescence. You have worked with these kids, and they've gotten into their later adolescence, I absolutely love that part of adolescence. They're kind of settling down. They're getting into being, humans that can take care of themselves. If you've got good communication with them, you've built banter with them. I had a kid that a friend of mine who happened to be their teacher texted me on my birthday and wished me a happy birthday and said that the kids should treat me like a queen. And my youngest said, well, Mom, they've killed queens before. And I stood there momentarily and looked at them and said, I'd be mad, except that's so damn funny. Building those kind of times, even swearing, that's always a big thing. Here's how I look at swearing. You do it as you need to, your values and your family. My kids were not taught that they couldn't swear. What they were taught is read the room. They were taught that language is language and it has power. And it's not appropriate to swear at school. It's not appropriate to swear at work in front of certain people. Monitor yourself. You can do it, but you better be able to handle it. And I'm very proud that they both know how to be very professional when they need to be and not when they don't need to be. All right, so you've hit this point. They've graduated from high school. You're like, how did that happen? Because, as I said, as soon as that kid starts growing, it goes so fast. They're 18, which is a very arbitrary number because here's a big shocker. Their brain isn't done growing yet. Their brain, as research has continued throughout my career and throughout scientific history, so to speak, the human brain isn't completely done growing until approximately 24 years of age. The bottom line is, and you think about your early 20s
you
and
have
how
had
dumb
this
you were in
amazing
yours, because I can
experience
think
of
about
being a
mine. I
parent.
got a back injury because of it.
Yeah.
We were
still love
idiots
it.
in our early 20s. I knew from a very
So,
young age. They're not
When I was a little
fully
girl, I would tell people
adults
that I
yet,
was going to be a
but they're
doctor.
still old enough
I
to
was gonna
start
be a mom.
making decisions for themselves. And here's
I
the
am
newsflash,
incredibly
you
fortunate
ain't done. But your role is changing. Despite having a lot of trouble, having kids, you think you're done though.
I
They're
ultimately
living on their
had
own.
two
They're
of the
paying
most
their
amazing
bills.
human beings on the planet.
You're looking forward to when you can be
And
friends with your
throughout
kids.
their lives,
Your
I have
kids
had
still
people
need
tell
you.
me how amazing they are.
Your role is
loved
changing,
being a mom.
but it's not gone by any stretch.
There were times I cried in the shower.
So let's talk
I
about
couldn't give them
parenting
what I
adult
wanted
children.
to give them.
So how do you
There were
parent
times
adults?
I couldn't do things that they wanted to do, but I
That's a good
tried
question.
my damnedest.
You
And I
shift
always said to
in
them,
one major sense.
thank you for being
You
my
go
child.
from managing
Thank you for
life,
picking
making their
me.
doctor's appointments, having parent-teacher conferences, telling them what they can
And
and can't
them
do,
as
making sure they're
adults
eating, making sure they're
is so
sleeping,
amazing.
all of that, keeping them
I am
alive
so glad
stuff.
because you know what you get to do when they're
You
adults?
now
You
become
get to sit back and watch the
more
fruits
of
of
a
your labor.
consultant.
You get to
They're
see
wise, all that work, leader,
in
so to
action,
speak.
making a
They're
difference. I always
elder.
used to tell my kids that
Someone
want you to
that they
change the
can
world.
turn around no matter
I
what's
want
happening
you to
in
change
their
your
life,
little
and you're
corner of
still
the
there.
world.
You're watching
Because
them.
you change
You're
your little
cheering
corner
them
of the
on.
world, you teach
But
somebody
you
else how
don't
to
do
change
all
theirs,
of that
and
stuff
so on,
anymore
and
because
so on, and
as they've
so on,
grown
and
up,
so on.
hopefully you've given them more and more responsibility for All themselves. right. And believe
So
me
what
when
is
I
the
say
no bullshit
that's hard.
bottom line of being a parent?
Because your role
has
strong
to
adult
evolve
relationships
with
with your
it.
kids
are the product of consistency and
you
communication.
can be a supportive friendship
You have
there.
to be
you
someone
can have
who they
friendships
can
with
rely
your
on.
kids. You
You're
can
not
enjoy
perfect.
hanging
Don't
out
try
with
to be.
them. I do.
A perfect
I
parent
love hanging
doesn't
out with my
exist.
kids.
My
It
youngest
becomes
child
a
once said to me when I was
relationship
having a
built
really
on
bad day where I
mutual
just felt like I
respect.
had failed them
They're adults.
horrendously.
You raised
Said
them.
to me, Mom,
You
you're
are
not the
not,
perfect
they're not your
parent.
property. You were
you're the
entrusted with
perfect
them.
parent for me. And
boundaries
I still
become
carry. I
important.
share that with
Both for them
clients.
and for you.
I still carry that in my heart.
So
I'm not
obviously
the perfect
you're moving
parent.
away
I was
from
the
managing
perfect
their
parent for
lives.
those
amazing people.
But you can
And
adopt
then
an
my
attitude of
oldest got married
curiosity
and
and
gave me
support.
another
Hopefully you've
kid
started to do that in their younger years.
who is
You know,
absolutely
looking at
amazing.
what they're
I'm
interested
the
in,
mom-in-law,
encouraging their
and his
hobbies,
mom and dad
being
have a lot
supportive
to be
of what
proud
they
of in
want to
that
do.
kid.
Support them in
I
whatever
love
role
him
that
as
you
much
can,
as I
depending on
love
what
the
they
rest
choose as a career.
of my kids.
Support them
I
in
often say I have
college as
3
they're
kids because of
making
him.
and that is
their way
something
through.
that I'm
If they go
very
to college or their
happy
trade
about.
school or however
That
that is,
relationship
but you
is
want to
healthy
be
and built on a
you
strong
want to learn
foundation.
from them.
A
It's now
foundation that
their
started
turn
when
to
they were
teach
kids.
you who they are. You know, you've helped
So,
create that foundation.
We've gotten through the
but now
parenting
that
stuff.
tree is growing. We
Let's
talked about
talk
the
about what we're
tree
going to talk
is-
about next time.
You're building roots, and they're like a little seedling is in
Are
their
you
younger years. And in
intimidating?
adolescence, those roots are starting to grow. Well, now in
next topic,
adulthood, they're definitely
strong
starting
women
to grow.
and
That
how
core,
to
the trunk of that
deal
tree is
with
their values. You
being
have helped
told that you're a
contribute to that,
bitch
but
and be
they
proud of
are
it.
very capable of choosing
Until
who
next
they
time,
want
everybody.
to be
Take
around
care.
and what their values are, and they may not be the same as yours. But that doesn't change that you still love them.
Oh, trust
hopefully.
me. What happened with her is the motivation of that.
It's important to treat them as the adults they are, obviously. One of the things that can get really dangerous, and you got to catch yourself early in parenting adults, is guilt tripping them. We've all been in early adulthood. We've been in them. They've got friends, they've got their own lives, they've got people around them that are very much a part of their life that you may not know. They have hobbies that may be different from what they were doing when they were younger. And that's okay. But don't trip them into spending time with you. I promise you that will backfire on you massively. You won't know what's going on in their life. You won't know what's, if they're hurting or anything like that, because they don't want that. They have to grow and learn, and the only way they can do that is not to feel like they're going to make you feel bad if they don't do what you want. If they can't hang out with you one weekend, okay, they can't hang out with you. Make plans. Ask them what their schedule is. Offer invitations for connection with no strings attached. You want to come over and have dinner? They're like, that can even change if they've had a busy weekend or whatever. It's not a big deal if they can't make it. If you feel like they're trying to avoid you, then bring it up. Use those communication skills that you've built with them. If you're feeling like they're putting you off a little bit, don't talk about it over text. Have a conversation with them. Focus on listening more than talking. And that can be really hard. You want to tell them how to fix that. You want to tell them how to deal with their boss. You want to tell them that they're not really, you don't think that the way they're going to go is necessarily going to work, but you don't know that. They may have a plan that they're not going to tell you about. If you're talking more than listening, more than 50% in the conversation, you have now gone to lecturing. It's a conversation. It's not this parent-child like this. It's parent-child like this, because you're always going to be right here. And we'll talk about that more in just a minute. Boundaries, huge, 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 huge. There are certain things you do not want to know about your adult children. I will guarantee you that there are certain things you don't want to know about your adult children. You do not want to know about their sex life. It's not a real comfortable conversation. Now, if they're comfortable talking to you about it and you're comfortable having that conversation, great, have it. I've had interesting conversations with a lot of different people because that's what I do for a living. But you don't have to know about that stuff. But if they need to talk to you about it, hopefully you're open to that, because if they trust you enough to talk about that much intimacy in their life, be a part of it. Don't get caught up in relationship drama with them, And it's always, they always tell you when you start in a relationship or you're married, do not go talk about your relationship problems with your parents. I don't enjoy that when that happens, but I also try to be very open to both sides of the situation. Sometimes they just need to vent and you don't have to say anything. You don't know exactly what's going on. Don't automatically side with anybody. They're allowed to have their privacy. They're allowed to have a life. It does get difficult when you're worried about them. Guess what? That's the cruel thing about parenting is we worry. We want what's best for them. We want everything to be good for them. And nowadays it's even harder because I know for me, I look around at the world right now and I'm ashamed of what my generation has done to them. And my kids are having to live in a very difficult time because of my generation and the generation before them, the boomers and the Xers. We didn't do a very good job, and we need to fix that. But they're coming into their own now. And millennials and Gen Zs are making it very clear that the game is going to change, and we have to go with it. Honor their privacy and their independence. If they have privacy and independence and want to make decisions on their own, guess what? You did a really damn good job. They've got values and they've got that foundation you built with them. And they're using that to the best of their ability. It isn't a bad thing if you don't know everything. You know, you don't have to know everything. And respect decisions that they make, financial decisions, career decisions, lifestyle decisions. It's their life. You were born 20, 30, 40 years before they were. It was a whole different world. Their world is very different, and they can make good decisions and allow them to have other people who they respect contributing to helping them make those decisions. It's also important to define expectations on both sides. Talking about expectations such as financial help. What would that look like if they need financial help? How do they want to handle it? You don't want to solve every problem for them. You don't want to throw money at every problem that they have. If you've raised your children to problem solve, they'll come to you if they absolutely have to. You want that to be the case because they have to learn how to solve problems. Being an adult sucks a lot of the time. And don't be afraid to help them if they ask for it. Personally, I will help them because I know my kids, if they come to me and they need financial help, it's because that's the last thing they wanted to do. And they know they can come to me. They know I will help them, and they know there won't be questions asked. There may be times where it's a big thing and you have to talk about a loan or however that looks. But that's up to you, and that is a conversation you need to have with them so that you both have that. Don't put strings on it. Don't hold it over their head. That makes things really difficult for them. Living situations. You don't get to decide who they live with. And sometimes that can be hard. Sometimes they get involved with somebody who's not good for them. You don't have to tell them that, just be there. Give them the space to come to you and say, I made a mistake. Can you help me? And if you want to help, you do that. Because they never stop being your kid. But if they start dating somebody you don't necessarily like, and you just don't click well with them, that's none of your business. If that person loves them and cares about them and wants to be in their life and they're living their life the way they want to, you don't get a say in that, and you have to respect it. You also have to talk about time spent together. Time spent together doesn't always have to be in person. I can definitely say almost 95 to 99% of the time, I have talked to all of my kids at least once a day. Does that mean I've talked to them on the phone? Yes, but not necessarily here. It's here. We text every day. We send shit to each other every day. It's funny. You know, I got one yesterday that was Lucy from Peanuts, and I think it said, "That's bullshit." And my kid sent it to me and said, "Reminded me of Mom." Actually, they sent it to our group chat and said, reminded me of mom. I love those things. That's connection. Having those moments where, even if it's brief, you have that connection, they're there, you're there, it's there. That golden thread is not broken. It's also important to protect yourself. I'm extremely fortunate that I have not had issues with my kids that could be financially exploitive or emotionally exploitive. However, many of us have histories of abuse of substances in our family, or your kids may have a parent that has a history of substance abuse where they could be predisposed to it, or they have mental health struggles that they don't want to take care of. They don't want to take medication for, they don't want to go to the hospital for. That's when things get really complicated. And that's where you have to go back to being a parent. And sometimes you have to love from a distance. You cannot fix every problem that they create for themselves when they're in those situations. You can't force them to get treatment. You can't force them to be anything more than what they are in that moment. And you do not have to take shit from them. You do not have to be emotionally manipulated by them, because kids figure that out. They figure out how to manipulate us from a very young age. Again, it goes back to that attachment and that consistency and that communication, because even if you have done all of that, you could still have an issue come up that you have to love from a distance. You don't have to let your adult child suck all of your energy, your financial resources, your emotional resources to detriment of you, your partners, or your other children. You can set those boundaries and be okay with that. And guess what? If they're doing these things, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Just like if they're doing these things and you did have those issues when they were a kid and you cleaned yourself up and you dealt with all that, they don't get to put it on you. That doesn't get to happen. Don't become the emotional punching bag for your child. And that doesn't mean that they can't come to you and talk about what's going on, but blaming you for all of their problems. There are people that are very close to me who have gone through that, and I have helped talk through that. And I have gotten in the middle of it and said, you are not going to do that to your parent, because I won't put up with it. At some point, they have to grow up and understand that they are adults. One of the hardest things when they're adults, it's really hard when they're teenagers too, but you still have some attachment or some influence there, is watching them struggle. It's really, really hard to watch. You want to make it just perfectly comfortable and awesome for them. But if you do, if you fix everything, whether it's financial, whether it's relationships, whether it's job, what are you teaching them? Are you teaching them to be adults? Are you teaching them to deal with things? Good communication means they will come to you if they need to. You have to give them the space to struggle. We all struggle. We've all struggled. First time the car breaks down. You know, their car breaks down, they're trying to figure out how they're going to fix it, and what you want to do is throw money at it and fix it. Don't do that. I have had my kids say to me, we will figure this out. We will do this. And then I say, if you need help, talk to me. And they take care of it. There have been times when something's happened and it was a big deal and I needed to help them, and I did. And that was fine with me. But you have to let them struggle. You have to let them experience the consequences of their actions. If they make a dumb decision at work and they're on probation or whatever for it, that's their problem, not yours. They have to learn. One of the things that becomes very apparent as you become an adult is the old saying that the old people, or we thought were old people back then, is youth is wasted on the young. because of all the energy and the fun and all of that. When we have the wisdom, which is what we get from being able to learn from our mistakes and failures, the two worst words in the English language, not going to stop that. It is invaluable to gain that wisdom. Because trust me, they're going to see us do something that they don't like, and they're going to want to get in there and tell you how to do it. They also have to learn how to let you handle things. And yeah, they might look at you and go, see, I told you so. But you don't do that to them. Because like I said, while the relationship isn't like this, it's like this now, you're still here. And you never stop being a parent. From the day you became a parent till the day you die, you never stop being a parent. Ask permission to advise. We talked about that in our last episode with kids who are struggling at school or with friends, and asking them if they want you to step in and help. That carries over into their adulthood of, would you like to hear my thoughts? Is it okay for me to share my thoughts? Sometimes they're venting and they're angry, and all they need to do is talk it out. All they need to do is for you to hear what they have to say. All they need to do is hear that you still think they're the best thing out there. That's all they need. But if it sounds like they might want some advice, ask before giving. It's kind of like when you want to hug somebody. It's more appropriate to say, "Can I give you a hug?" before just walking up to them and giving them a hug. If you do that, it helps avoid you being seen as being critical of them and their life and their decisions. Because again, remember, if you have good communication, you've built a strong foundation, the one thing they do not want to do is disappoint you. Give them the space that they need to be able to do all of that. Be a cheerleader. Cheer them on when they get a promotion, when they change jobs, when they're happy, when they're making strides, they're kicking ass and taking names. Support them rather than judge them. That's important. Show them, no matter what their age, that you believe in them and what they're able to do. Remind them of the things they've overcome. Everybody's overcome difficulty and struggle. Remind them. Take them back there. Trust me, my kids know that speech. They've all gotten it. And I've given it to their friends too. Don't be afraid to remind them of who they are and where they came from, and that they are the best damn thing on the planet. It never stops. Being their cheerleader never stops. Telling them you're proud of them never stops. It's so important to them, even as adults, to hear those things. Another really important thing that you got to do as being the parent of an adult child is manage your emotions. When you brought them into this world, or they came into your world, you accepted that role. That is what you chose. I've said it before. The most selfish thing we do is become a parent. We want that. We strive for that. We do whatever we have to, whether that's having a baby the normal way, adopting a baby, surrogacy, any of those things. We chose that. That is the most selfish thing you do in your entire life. The most selfless thing you do is be a parent. And part of that is managing your emotions. It doesn't mean that they can exploit you emotionally. It means it's not their job to make you happy. It's not their job to give you something to be happy about. It's your job to be happy. It's never theirs. And it never has been, and it never will be. The other important thing to remember is they are responsible for their own lives. You are not. Especially if you're a mom. Oh my God. You go back in mental health history, mothers were blamed for everything. There's a documentary I watched once called Refrigerator Mothers, and it was about the idea that mothers who were, quote, cold towards their children caused autism. Are you out of your fucking mind? Sorry, I'm on a high horse, but I'm going to get back on one in just a second. So, the things that you should avoid in parenting your kids. I mentioned it earlier. Do not guilt trip your kids. It's so easy to do, but don't do it. It's just not cool. And if they're guilt tripping you, call them out on it. You know, they're falling back into old habits of being a little kid, call them out on it. The desire to please us never goes away. They want to see us happy with them. They want to be the best thing they ever were and ever will be for you. They also, if this works the way it should and you have good communication and you've built good relationship, they want to make sure you're okay. They want to take care of you as you get older. I have a hard time accepting that sometimes, as my kids will tell you. Because when I turned 50, I suddenly became this old human being. You know, I can't do anything. I shouldn't climb things. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do that, whatever. But I get it. They want to take over those responsibilities that you dealt with. And it's important to let them do that. Don't try to fix every problem for them. Again, it doesn't help them. It hinders their personal growth, as we talked about. Do not micromanage your adult children. Do you like being micromanaged? We've all had that boss. The only good thing about that was we could go home. We could put our phone on do not disturb and not answer their phone calls or whatnot. Don't do it. I have seen too many people think that they've got to have say in everything that their kids do, how they decorate their house, how they do this, how they raise their own children, and we're going to get to that in a minute. That is not your job. If you did your job right, you don't need to be doing that shit. They've got a good head on their shoulders. They've learned from you. They've got good values in that trunk of their tree. Stop it. You don't get to micromanage them. You shouldn't be micromanaging them even as young children. Because if you do, what do they learn? Mistake and failure are the two worst words in the English language, but they are needed. We don't learn if we don't fuck shit up. The bottom line is, if you try to micromanage that relationship, you will damage it. You will lose them. Because here's the really difficult part to realize. They owe you nothing. They didn't ask to be born. You took that job. You decided to raise them. You wanted that experience. They didn't ask you to. And they could turn around and walk away from you at any time. If you want to micromanage and have your hand in everything that they're doing, I will guarantee you at some point that is going to blow up massively like a nuclear bomb in your face. You will lose them. Whereas if you give them the space to be them, remember we talked about in the early years, they do the base touching. They go toddle away and come back, and that space gets bigger and bigger the older they get, and it still happens even as adults. They don't forget you. They realize as they get older how much they want you and need you in their life. Sometimes just being the person that listens solves the problem. I love it when that happens. You know, my oldest does that. They'll just vent all with me about this, that, the other. This person's doing something. This person's doing something. Now I just have to listen and tell them how amazing they are. So now we're going to get to a very important part of being the parent of an adult child. And I am going to get on my soapbox, so fair warning. There are certain things you should never, ever do to your adult children. Number one, do not push your adult children to have children. As I said, you got to want to be a parent to be a good parent. You were a good parent. You want to raise your kids to be great, but it is not their job to give you grandkids so you can play and spoil them and do things they don't want you to do, and then they got to fix everything you fucked up. I'm a grand auntie. My best friend shares her grandkids with me. I've been in her kids' lives since they were tiny. And I was there when one of my nieces was born. I get a lot of pleasure out of that. But my kids have not had children, and I don't think they will. And that is okay with me, because you know what that means? We can do adult things together. We can travel as adults. We can do those fun things. And yes, believe it or not, we still go to kid movies together as adults. It's not their job to make you happy. They have to decide if they want to make the emotional, financial, physical commitment to having children. And you get no say in that. None whatsoever. So learn it now and make sure you keep it in mind. And then we get to rejecting them. Do not reject your child because they are not a cisgendered straight person. If you think your child's amazing and wonderful and just well respect, you are so proud of them, but they come to you and say, I'm gay or I'm trans, and you turn them away, you are an abject failure as a parent. I am the parent that they can come to. You can't do that. Their sexuality and their gender is one little piece of the person that they are. The bottom line is we're all people. We all identify the way we identify. Several years ago, when I first started working with Jonathan Sheffield, we did a podcast called The Queer Centric, and I was a guest on that podcast. And he said something to me during that podcast that really brought that home for me. We were talking about things that I like cars and motorcycles and races and things like that. And he said to me, you're more butch than I am. You know what? He's right. I identify as a female. I always will. But I also like a lot of guy stuff. They're people. They're not a gender. They're not who they sleep with or who they love. They are people. And if you turn your child away because of some religion that says you cannot be a part of that, or some being that we're not 100% sure exists, is going to fuck you up, you have failed as a parent. And I will stand by that. And if you're watching this and going, well, no, there is no room. There's no light there. There's no negotiation there. If you will say you will die for your children and then suddenly they tell you they're gay or they love somebody that is trans or they're in the community and you want nothing to do with them, that's you. That's a you problem. Because they're still your kid. And they're amazing. The bottom line is you have had this amazing experience of being a parent. I loved it. I still love it. I knew from a very young age. When I was a little girl, I would tell people that I was going to be a doctor and I was going to be a mom. I am incredibly fortunate that despite having a lot of trouble having kids, I ultimately had two of the most amazing human beings on the planet. And throughout their lives, I have had people tell me how amazing they are. I loved being a mom. There were times I cried in the shower. I couldn't give them what I wanted to give them. There were times I couldn't do things that they wanted to do, but I tried my damnedest. And I always said to them, thank you for being my child. Thank you for picking me. And them as adults is so amazing. I am so glad, because you know what you get to do when they're adults? You get to sit back and watch the fruits of your labor. You get to see all that work in action, making a difference. I always used to tell my kids that I don't want you to change the world. I want you to change your little corner of the world. Because you change your little corner of the world, you teach somebody else how to change theirs, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. All right. So what is the no bullshit bottom line of being a parent? Strong adult relationships with your kids are the product of consistency and communication. You have to be someone who they can rely on. You're not perfect. Don't try to be. A perfect parent doesn't exist. My youngest child once said to me when I was having a really bad day where I just felt like I had failed them horrendously, said to me, Mom, you're not the perfect parent. You're the perfect parent for me. And I share that with clients. I still carry that in my heart. I'm not the perfect parent. I was the perfect parent for those amazing people. And then my oldest got married and gave me another kid who is absolutely amazing. I'm the mom-in-law, and his mom and dad have a lot to be proud of in that kid. I love him as much as I love the rest of my kids. I often say I have 3 kids because of him. And that is something that I'm very happy about. That relationship is healthy and built on a strong foundation, a foundation that started when they were kids. So, we've gotten through the parenting stuff. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about next time. Are you intimidating? Our next topic, strong women and how to deal with being told that you're a bitch and be proud of it. Until next time, everybody, take care.